Hey, gorgeous. Welcome to Season 2 of the Hormone P.U.Z.Z.L.E Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Kayla Smith, CEO of the Hormone P.U.Z.L.E Society, a women's health hub for fertility, hormones, and the business of coaching, creator of the Hormone P.U.Z.L.E method, an infertility warrior, two-time boy mom, and women's health expert. This podcast is for women struggling with infertility, painful periods, terrible PMS, or really just any symptom of hormone imbalance that they are ready to eliminate for good. Tune in weekly as we interview amazing experts in the fields of women's health, breaking down those hormone walls, nerding out on nutrition, and having way too much fun. Whether you're beginning your journey or you've been struggling for years, we're going to finally help you put those pieces of your hormone puzzle back together so that you can get pregnant and eliminate those pesky symptoms for good. Are you ready? This season is packed with even more expert guests sharing groundbreaking knowledge, giving you that jolt of energy that you so desperately need, sending you lots of virtual hugs, and inspiring you to take your fertility into your own hands and make that baby. Thank you so much for tuning in. Now let's get started on your road to transformation. On today's show, we have Lara Adler, who is an environmental toxins expert and educator, as well as a certified holistic health coach who teaches other health coaches, nutritionists, and holistic health practitioners how to eliminate the number one thing holding their clients back from the results they are seeking: the unaddressed link between chemicals and chronic health problems. She trains practitioners to become experts in everyday toxic exposures so they can improve client outcomes without spending hundreds of hours researching on their own. Combining environmental health education and business consulting, she's helped thousands of professionals all over the world in 25 countries to elevate their skill sets, get better results for their clients, and become sought-out leaders in the growing environmental health and detoxification field. Lara is a member of the National Association of Environmental Medicine and the American Holistic Health Association. On today's show, we're going to talk about environmental toxins and how they can affect you and your fertility. This is a show you're not going to want to miss. Let's welcome Lara to our show. Hey, Lara, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me to come and chat toxins with you.
Yes. So tell us a little bit more about how you started working in toxins and who you are.
Yeah, it happened kind of on accident. I just sort of meandered my way here into this space. I was always interested in nutrition and health and wellness and food, kind of a food nerd, but didn't really pursue anything professionally until sort of later in life. And then I was like, let me check out this nutrition field and health coaching field. I was in, corporate sales in an office in a cubicle in a quadrangle. Ooh. So that was a little soul sucking, like under the fluorescent lights and everything. So I was like, let me see if I can flex this sort of nerdy food, nutrition, wellness muscle that I've just always kind of had, and sought out health coaching and started went back to school, started working in that area, working with people around health and nutrition. And most of my clients were coming to me for weight loss, pretty standard. Most of them had results. They lost weight. They felt great. And then I had a couple of clients that were really compliant. They did everything I recommended and things didn't budge for them. And it was frustrating for them. It was frustrating for me. And so I started kind of digging into the literature of what am I missing? Because I'm new at this. There's probably things I'm missing. Let me see if I can find them. And it happened through that sort of discovery process that I opened the door into this whole field of environmental health, environmental medicine, and how chemicals in our environment can negatively impact our health. And specifically through that lens, was looking at it, through the lens of resistant weight loss and weight gain. And it kind of blew my mind, because at that point, like, I'd personally been invested in the health space for, 15 years, and was like a voracious reader of all things about food and nutrition and wellness. And like, this was kind of the first time I was hearing about this topic. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. I just spent, however many thousands of dollars on this program. It was like $8,000 on this year-long program. And that's supposed to teach me all sort of the basic fundamentals of lifestyle health. And this was completely omitted. It was omitted from none of my friends or colleagues that were in that space or in the health professional space were like, we don't know anything about this. And that really struck me as a significant education gap, a significant gap in the conversation that we're having about optimizing our health and minimizing disease. And at the same time that all of that was happening, like, my sister-in-law was pregnant with my niece, who's 12 or 13 now. Geez, I'm going to get in trouble for not knowing that. I started researching, products that she should be looking for as a new mom. And I was like horrified. Yeah. At what I was finding. And so that really kind of sparked this fire in me to learn as much as I could about this, learn why these exposures were happening and why these chemicals were permitted. And, what are the actual health effects, and what do we know, and what don't we know? And that was, I started after about 2 years of doing that research and kind of putting my thoughts together and making sure I was understanding the science correctly. I started teaching back in 2012, at first just to my peers within the health coaching space. And that's what I've been doing ever since.
I love that. And I love that you're talking about this, because I had the same experience. I went to health coaching school and spent all this money, and I don't feel like toxins were talked about enough. And the more I start researching it, I'm finding the same. I'm like, holy crap, why are we not talking about this? This is huge. Yeah. So thank you so much for talking about this and bringing it to light. So and tell our audience, I know a lot of people, me included, I used to think toxins were like the environment. Like, well, I can't really do anything about emissions and, the air we breathe. So tell us, what are environmental toxins, and how are they affecting us?
Great. I think it's important to contextualize the words that we're using, because people come with a preconceived idea of what we mean by when we say the word toxic, right? Mm-hmm. Oftentimes what people think is, they think, something that is acutely toxic, first of all, meaning something that's going to cause an immediate reaction, sickness, skin blistering, whatever. And that might require a phone call to poison control or a trip to the emergency room. So there are toxic chemicals that have those effects. What we're talking about generally in the environmental health space is not those acute effects, but these sort of low simmering, long-term effects that we're getting. To your question, in terms of like, what does environmental health mean? It's very all-encompassing. So environment, broadly speaking, in this realm tends to apply to anything that's happening outside the body, right? The internal environment, external environment. And so things like air pollution, oil spills, when we think of environmental toxins or environmental pollutants, that's where our mind typically goes. Mm-hmm. And absolutely, those are environmental toxins, and absolutely those can impact our health. Air pollution directly affects mortality. So we know, and heart disease and all of the birth defects and all of these other issues. So we know that those bigger external factors like air pollution and water contamination and soil contamination are a factor, but also the discussion includes, and this is where my work focuses primarily, although I do touch on those other topics, is on our personal environment, like our home environment. So we are also being exposed to environmental toxins or toxicants in our home through the food that we eat, the water that we drink, the products that we bring into our home every day, our personal care products, our cleaners, our furniture, our carpeting. So like we are constantly being exposed to these very low levels of chemicals that research is showing is very significantly linked to a lot of different chronic health issues, even at those low exposures. And given the sort of normality of it, like we're all being exposed to this stuff every day. And so that's really like the field of environmental health is really looking both at those big external air pollution factors where lots of people are being affected and there's not a lot of things that individual people can do. Like I can't do anything about car emissions,
right?
As an individual human being, I can't do anything about, right now there's oil being spilled into the San Francisco Bay from some oil pipeline. So, I personally, as an individual person, can't do anything about that. But as an individual person, I do have the ability to affect change in my sort of exposure exposo, meaning sort of the total of what I'm being exposed to, of what I bring into my home. I do have choices in the marketplace about what products that I buy. Certainly not everybody does have those choices, and there's lots of reasons for that. But I think that where we do have choice, we should flex that and lean into those choices, because that will have effects downstream for other people who need it.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
That's sort of the big picture of like what we're talking about is everything, frankly, right? And so, and we're not talking about, air pollution. We're not talking about soil pollution. Those things are real issues. But in my lane, I'm primarily sticking to what are we being exposed to in our normal everyday lives at home, just doing what we do.
Exactly. And so talk to me a little bit about that. What are some things that we're being exposed to that we might not have thought of in our environment? What are like your top 5 things that you see?
Oh, there's not, I'm like, there's not even a top 5. It's more like a top 20.
Okay. Touch on your favorites. Let's
so I think, I like to look through the lens of, what are the most common exposures? What are the levels of chemicals that are showing up in the largest percentage of people? So, for example, phthalates, which I can talk about, is a class of chemicals that's used as a stabilizer for scents and colors in scented products, but it's also used as a plasticizer to make certain types of plastics soft and flexible. So, because of those 2 uses, it's found in like millions of products. It's just everywhere. And the CDC, who does human biomonitoring studies, they're monitoring the levels of chemicals in the U.S. population through their NHANES program. They found metabolites of phthalates in the urine of 98% of people tested. So like that tells us that this exposure is ubiquitous. Like we're all being exposed. And so phthalates are very concerning to me. They're definitely one of the top things that we are exposed to. They are an endocrine disrupting chemical, and we can get into all that stuff. I certainly think pesticides are top of the list. Like we're all getting some degree of pesticide exposure through our conventional foods. And even if food is our primary source of exposure to pesticides, but also if we live near a golf course, or if the parks that we bring our kids to spray pesticides, which they very often do because it lowers the maintenance requirements, then, we can also be exposed just by like laying in the grass. If people use pesticides on their own yards, then they're getting exposure, more significant exposure that way than through their food, but both are important. There's other types of plasticizers like bisphenols. BPA is the most well-known. We're getting exposed to that in lots of different places through our, plastics in our kitchen, through handling of cash register receipts, through eating of canned foods. So those are some of the big ones, but those ones are also easier to address for the individual. If we look at it through the other lens of really common exposures that we're getting that are much harder for us to actually do something about, that's where I look to chemicals like flame retardants, which are found in our upholstered furniture, our couches, our lazy boy chairs, and things like that. Those are harder to get rid of because you have to replace they don't like off gas after a certain period of time. Right. They will constantly be releasing these chemicals. And so those are harder to change. I think that, this conversation, and so for some people, this is going to be the first time they're hearing about this stuff, and their mind is going to go, and they're going to go, oh my God, and it's going to be nail biting.
I'm a health coach, and sometimes my mind goes like that. I'm like, holy shit,
exactly. And it's the same for me. Like I just learned something yesterday that I was like, oh my God, I have to go update all my lessons because this is like insane. It didn't make that connection. Yeah. I think it's helpful to point out, and just as a starting point, as an anchor, maybe as people are listening and starting to be like, oh, what do I do? Is that when it comes to these exposures, it's the cumulative effect of ongoing exposures. So one exposure here or there, it's not a big deal. Our bodies can handle that. The goal is not to like empty your home or throw everything out. The goal is to start to systematically reduce your exposures in the places possible. And that's a journey, right? In the same way that health is a journey, and you don't just suddenly go from like Roy Rogers and Kentucky Fried Chicken to like goji berries and, Whole30 or whatever, right? Like that's a transition that happens over time. And I think that helping people understand that this is addressing these exposures can take time. If it takes 6 months, if it takes 6 years, whatever, it's a process. I'm still learning and doing things, and I've been doing this for over a decade. So And so I just want to preface all the things that I'm going to say by letting people know, like, don't freak out. It's not like the next time you ever drink out of plastic, your hormones are going to explode and it's going to be the end of the world. It's not quite like that, but we do want to start systematically address them in as best of a capacity as we can.
And I love that you prefaced it with that. Yeah, I think that's so very important for people to understand that it's not tomorrow you have to throw out every single thing in your home.
The instinct is there for some people, right? Like I get that comment all the time is like, oh my God, after hearing you, I just want to like start all over. And I want people to temper that because that makes people, urgency is great. Like, yes, I encourage urgency as much as possible, but I also recognize that stress is toxic in a whole different way physiologically. And so we have a fine line where we have to walk about being able to take information in. That's hard for us to hear often. That can inspire feelings of guilt, maybe of things that we did before we knew better. So there's lots of layers to this. And so I would rather people kind of approach it from a like, okay, I'm going to take this information in and I'm going to take a deep breath and I'm going to pick one thing and I'm just going to change that one thing. And then once I feel good about that change and it's like embedded, I'll then move on to the next one. But like feeling like you have to do everything at once is counterproductive, I think, to the process, because then people will get discouraged and we don't want that either.
No. And I completely agree. And let's talk a little bit about products.
Yes.
What I tell my clients with products is this is a slow process. As you run out of something, replace it with a cleaner option. So what is your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the right way to do it. I think especially because a lot of people will come from the perspective of like, yeah, but I paid for this. And like, I don't want to just throw, it's quote perfectly good. Right. Mm-hmm. And so fine, use it up. And when you're ready to replace that item, get rid of it. So that's really how I look at things, like, especially those bigger, harder to change things like furniture, right? Like you don't have to throw out your couch. There's a couple tweaks you can do to help minimize your exposure to those flame retardants around your couch in the meantime. But when it's time to upgrade, then I want people to have a little bit of knowledge under their belt so they can say, okay, here's the criteria that I need to sort of tick off on my list as I'm shopping for a new one. It can't have added flame retardants. It can't have stain resistant treatments. And then you can go, good, great. I don't have to think about that anymore. And that's actually, I think it is very much a process. You know, when people start changing, this is an analogy. It's a food analogy that I think is helpful for people. if you're used to eating potato chips and French fries and highly palatable food, processed food, then vegetables don't taste good. They just are bland. They are, right? And after you start switching and minimizing those highly palatable, super salty fat, salt, sugar, fat foods, and you start eating more whole foods, then you start to appreciate the flavors more. And so it's gradual. It takes time. And so we just that healthy food now becomes our new normal, right? Like we don't really think about it. And then if we go back and we eat one of those things, we're like, oh my God, how did I ever eat this?
Right.
Disgusting, right? But like, that's just showing an evolution, and that like, it's, and so I kind of like encourage people to think that way. Like we're not asking you to go from super hyper palatable to like, oh, this is hippie crunchy stuff that doesn't work. It's, you know, it's a transition, and it takes time. And we adapt, and these things become our new normal. And so, you know, I don't think about toxic exposures as much as people actually may imagine that I do, because I don't have a lot of that stuff in my house, so I don't worry about it. Right. And that's, I think, the goal in terms of like that stress and anxiety, right? Like I don't have that stress and anxiety, even though I know all of the horrible, I jokingly say like, I can ruin anything. Like I know a lot, and I can ruin anything that's fun by being like, oh, did you know?
Right. I have to stop myself from doing that sometimes. Like if I'm
I mean, I was joking with my assistant, and I was like, I think I need to make a t-shirt that says I'm fun at parties,
right?
Like, because like I don't think I am actually. I mean, not that anybody's going to parties right now, but like right. You know, the factoids and facts that I know and things that I'm like, hey, did you know, they're never things that people are like, oh, that's so funny. They're always what?
Yep,
so,
exactly. I know my sister-in-law was putting a plastic container of food in the microwave at Thanksgiving, and she was going to serve it to us, and I was like cringing, and I'm like, I'm not eating that food. She's put it in the microwave in plastic, but I'm like, if I say that, you know, everybody's going to look at me like I have 3 heads.
Yeah, I mean, I think and that really does bring up a whole other topic, which is, you know, and this might be different for your audience as they're learning and just kind of taking this information in. But for those of us that do have more of this education under our belts, and we are passionate about it because we recognize how wrong it is and how not okay it is. And so there is that compulsion to educate, and that can often manifest or show up in a way that's like feels judgmental and finger waggy and soapboxy. And there is like, we have to pull ourselves back a little bit and recognize that how we deliver this information can often be more important than the actual information itself, because if we deliver it wrong, then we lose them, and then they're going to have a bad experience, and then they're likely going to disregard anything similar down the line that comes that way. So there's a lot of responsibility in how we share this information so that we can encourage and inspire and empower people to make better choices, and not just like, you know, you should, like, you know, as I like to say, like, don't shit all over people.
Yeah.
Like, don't shit on them. Like, you should do this and you should do that. It's like, no, like, nobody likes being told what to do. Yeah. I mean, I'm stubborn. I don't like being told what to do. So it's not about telling people what to do. It's about educating them and letting them make their own choices.
I love that. I love it. So let's talk about beauty products for a minute.
Yes.
What are, you know, maybe like we said earlier, it's very overwhelming to think about if this is the first time this audience is hearing this, to change out all your beauty products. So is there a couple that you're like, I would start here first? As you start to run out, like what are kind of the top 3 offenders?
You know, it's a good question. It's hard to prioritize it is really hard because, you know, how do we decide whether or not our deodorant is more important than our foundation versus our whatever? I think if it comes to personal care products in general, not just beauty products, I think the easiest, the one that's a no-brainer for me, that's like, please just don't use that, are fragrances like perfumes, which is hard, right? I get that this is hard to move away from, and there is a physiological reason why it's hard. Our olfactory sense, which is our sense of smell, is connected to our limbic system, which is like the most primitive part of our brain. It's also where our memories live. So scent is the most powerful memory trigger that we have, and so we get these emotional and psychological attachments to scent. It's an incredibly powerful motivator. Companies who manufacture these products know that. Right. There were studies that there was a university study years ago that looked at how much money people gambled in a casino when they pumped the smell of vanilla, which is like a universally pleasant smell. And like the amount of money goes up because people feel happy and they don't even know that it's happening. And so scent is really powerful. So we're fighting a little bit against our own natural biology when I'm asking people to move away from these synthetic fragrances. But the reason is, and I'll come back to like synthetic fragrances and what we can do instead. But the reason why we want to move away from these products is because they are almost always going to contain these phthalates. And these phthalates are hormone disruptors. They're endocrine disrupting chemicals. It's one of the most studied. And it's linked to a very long list of health effects. The products, the perfumes and fragrances are made up. So there's like 3,000 ingredients that fragrance formulators can choose when they're formulating their scent. And their scent it's a trade secret. They don't have to tell anybody what it is, which is why it just says fragrance. They're not going to tell you like it's this chemical plus 30 of those like they don't have to tell you that, right?
Right.
It's also that's proprietary. That's what they're selling you is that scent. And so they want that signature scent to stick around as long as possible on your skin if it's a perfume, on your hair if it's shampoo, on your clothes if it's laundry detergent. And so they add phthalates in, which is a plasticizer, so that it creates like a coating. It fixes the scent molecules to whatever it is, your skin, your hair, your clothes. And so when I look at, I know we're moving a little bit away from, I'll come back to products, but, laundry detergents and dryer sheets that have these like fragrance release beads, that claim they have the scent last for like 3 months. Right. And I'm like, oh, how did they do that? Oh, they probably just jacked up the amount of phthalates to make sure that it's sticking around longer. I mean, there's probably other things that they're doing, but anyway, that's not a good thing. And so when it comes to like personal care, beauty products, just ditch the fragrance. And if people are really attached, and I get it, people are really attached to fragrances. It's just part of like, it makes them feel good. I get that. There are companies that make essential oil based, more natural based fragrances. They don't tend to linger on our skin and on our clothes as long because they don't have phthalates. You're not going to ever see a perfume that has the word phthalate on the ingredient label. You're going to see the word fragrance or parfum. It's an ingredient of an ingredient. So phthalates are in the fragrance mixture. They are not the fragrance mixture.
Got it.
And since they don't have to tell you what's in it, you don't know if there's phthalates, but most of them do have some level of phthalates. There are some companies that make fragrances and perfumes that are, or they claim are phthalate free. One, we don't know what they're using instead, right? This is a common problem when anything says it's like BPA free, phthalate free, PFOA free. I think it's a good knee-jerk reaction to ask, okay, if you're not using that chemical, what are you using? They don't have to tell you that either.
Right.
And so, so one, we don't really know if that's accurate when you've got like conventional synthetic perfumes or fragrances that have the words phthalate free on the package. I don't really put a lot of stock into that. But even if it is phthalate free, there are other scent compounds like musks that can be problematic. They can be allergens, so people can have allergic reactions or respiratory problems. And some of those do have suspected endocrine hormone disrupting properties. So just like minimizing fragrances. And it's hard. Like my neighbor, when her laundry room faces the side of my house. And so when she does laundry, I have to close all my windows because I just instantly get this stink in my house of like whatever dryer sheet she's using, and it's horrible. And I wish there was like a city ordinance that was like, don't use those. So anyway, to me, the most important of like the beauty products to just ditch is to ditch perfumes. And I know it's a big ask, but there are better options out there, essential oil based products that are very transparent about their ingredients and are quite nice. So that's sort of top of that list. Beyond that, I would say, anything that's anything that's going to stay on your skin. So a deodorant, anything that's a lotion, makeup, meaning like you're not putting it on and washing it off like shampoo, right? Like your contact time with shampoo, even though it still has phthalates, and the reason why you can smell your shampoo like 10 hours after you wash your hair, phthalates are still there, you're still being exposed, but it's different than when you're getting that full skin all day skin contact. So that's, I think, an important factor. I think it's worth noting in this conversation about products that we're putting on our skin. We do absorb a lot of the chemicals that are in those products. We do not absorb everything that we put on our skin. This is a very common misunderstanding or misconception that people often share with good intention, but it's not accurate. So we don't absorb everything we put on our skin. Obviously, makeup wouldn't work if it absorbed into our skin because you couldn't see it, right? So that is intended to not absorb into the skin. It sits on the skin, which is why it's still visible. But we do absorb a lot of things that we put on our skin, and those chemicals go right into our bloodstream directly when we do absorb them. And that's concerning because that means that our bodies don't have as urgent a chance or an opportunity to break them down, to metabolize and detoxify them as if we had eaten them. So when you're eating food that has, or anything, drinking anything, it goes through the digestive system, it hits the liver. The liver is the main detox organ, helps to figure out, okay, where's it going? Is it going in pee? Is it going in poo? We're going to get it out. When you absorb things through your skin or when you inhale them, they go directly into the bloodstream first before they eventually work their way around to the liver. So they're just like in your system a little bit longer, and that's concerning, which is why I encourage people to start swapping out their products. But rather than go like product by product, I think it's easier to just say, okay, here are these ingredients that you want to look out for. And when your products run out, just look for cleaner products. So we want to make sure that our products don't contain fragrance or perfume or parfum, because again, that's an indication of phthalates. We want to be careful of preservative ingredients like parabens. Those are sort of two of the top sort of hot words that I encourage people to just look out for. There are thousands of chemicals that are used in our consumer products and our beauty products. I also want to point out thumbtack. Pause that. Just because when I say the word chemical, everything, we have to recognize everything is a chemical, right? So chemical does not imply bad, right? So when I say there's thousands of chemicals, not all of those are bad, right? Water is a chemical. Water is also an ingredient in personal care products. Like water in and of itself, not the problem. Aloe vera is comprised of chemical. Our hormones are chemicals. Everything is a chemical. So what we're talking about are not all chemicals, but specifically bad chemicals. So there's thousands that are found in personal care products, and I don't ever expect anyone to know all of them. I certainly don't know all of them, but what I do know is there's like words that I'll look for that I do know and say, okay, if it has these words, it's out. I don't care however many good things are in the product. If it contains fragrance or perfume, it's a no. If it contains parabens, and that'll look like methylparaben, propylparaben, ethylparaben. There's like 5 or 6 of them. Those are words to look out for. Anything that ends in ETH, so satireth, sodium laureth, sulfate, like ETH is a reflective of a chemical process called ethoxylation. And when chemicals undergo that process, there's these carcinogenic byproducts that can be produced called 1,4-dioxane, and manufacturers know about this and they can remove them, but most of them don't because it's like an extra step that's adds cost. So I encourage people to stay away from those. I encourage people to be really careful about sunscreen products, even if it's in their makeup. So if their foundation has SPF, you really want to be careful about the standard chemical sunscreen ingredients like oxybenzone or avobenzone or octisalate. Those are sort of some of the common ones. They're all endocrine disrupting. They're all hormone disrupting. Those are really problematic chemicals. We don't want them.
Gotcha. Wow. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing all of that. That was definitely a great list. And I think what we said earlier, start small as you run out, try not to get overwhelmed.
And I think that and it's helpful to kind of point people towards, like, okay, ran out, but now what? Now what? Right. People can go to my website. I have like a short curated list of products that I like that, here's great skincare products and personal care products and kitchen items and all that kind of stuff over on my website. But people can also go, there's, online retailers that specialize in just curating cleaner products. So there's places like the Detox Market, which has really extensive collection of beautiful, functional, great skincare, makeup, the whole hair care, everything that doesn't have any of these really questionable chemicals. They're not all like super hyper pure, but I don't think that matters. I think it's like if we're 80 or 90% of the way there, and I think the products that they have are excellent, great. If everybody used that, I think we'd be in a totally different world in terms of these exposures. So the Detox Market, Credo Beauty, Folane, like there's stores that you can go to that have done kind of the short work of curating. You can also look for certifications. I really like Made Safe certified. So if you see products are Made Safe, you can go to the Made Safe website and look up products that are Made Safe certified. Then you say, okay, at least I now know what I'm going to replace this with, right? Oh, I need a new foundation. Let me go look on Detox Market and see if I can find one that I like. I'll try it. Great. I will say that, 15 years ago, the quote safer, better products, they weren't good. Right. And people are still kind of hanging on to that. So there's this idea that like, these products aren't as good as, whatever I get at the department store or the really high, or like the high end expensive stuff at Sephora, whatever. That's not true anymore. Not at all. These products work just as well. Yep. They're safer. And we have to recognize, and this is like the biggest swindle for me in the beauty space, is that, people think that the Lancome eye cream that's like $185 is somehow more special than what you're getting at Walgreens. Right. But they're not, you're using basically the same ingredients. It's like, and neither of them are good. Right. So it's like, to me, that's a swindle, right? Like that's just marketing. What you're paying for is their ad budgets and marketing. Yep. And it's not a better product. I agree. Yeah. I love it. We're going to take a short break to hear a word from our sponsor. And our sponsor is actually a clean beauty brand called Keep Me Safe. So we'll be right back. Hey y'all, it's Coach Kayla here. I hope you are loving this episode as much as I am. We will be back in just a minute, but first, a word from our sponsors. Today's sponsor of the Hormone P.U.Z.Z.L.E Podcast is Keep Me Safe Organics, an all-natural beauty and skincare company. At Keep Me Safe, they combine personal development with an amazing product line that gives you confidence that you are reducing the toxins found in your homes. Today, we invite you to join us in part to help them do what they are doing, and that is reducing the toxins that are going into your body's largest organ, which is your skin. Indulge your senses, fall in love with our brand new shampoo and conditioner, and while you're there, check out their extensive array of safe for you and baby products. You can visit my.keepmesafeworldwide.com/Coach Kayla. And since you're a VIP, enter code Coach Kayla
at checkout for 10% off your entire purchase. You will find everything from shower essentials to makeup to skincare, and you can be sure that it's safe for you before, during, and after your pregnancy, and safe for your baby as well as the whole family. Thanks, guys. We are back. Thank you, Laura, for being here for our second half of the show.
Of course.
Yes. So now let's talk a little bit more about how these chemicals are disrupting our hormones. How are they disrupting our endocrine glands?
Yeah, so it's kind of tricky the way that they do it. So so anything that's considered an endocrine disruptor or hormone disrupting chemical basically just means that it's a chemical that has the ability to block or mimic the role of a natural hormone in the body, and estrogen, testosterone, thyroid hormone, what have you. Or it can alter the way that hormone is metabolized or even produced. And so there's different ways that it does it. But one of the biggest ways that it does is through the sort of concept of molecular mimicry. It's an unintentional molecular mimicry. So so our hormones operate in this sort of lock and key function. If you have an estrogen receptor, that's like the lock. And then you have estrogen that comes in like the key, and estrogen is supposed to only dock with or park in an estrogen receptor. That's what it's for, right? That's a lock and a key, one lock, one key. And with an actual key to your door, it's got a very specific shape and it only works for that lock. That's how it works. Mm-hmm. When we have endocrine disrupting chemicals, the shape of the molecule is so closely mirrors the shape of the hormone that we're talking about, whether it's, estradiol or whatever, that the body can't tell the difference. It's like the key is close enough that it still opens the lock. And so we have molecules of chemicals like bisphenol A, that is that plasticizer that's we're ubiquitously exposed to. It's very similar in shape molecularly to an estradiol, and so it can go in and dock into that receptor and then turn on or turn off expression of hormones in the body, and that in and of itself can be hugely problematic. And that's sort of the primary way that these endocrine disrupting chemicals work. They just are blocking natural hormones from being able to park in that spot because it's already full, or they're mimicking and they're parking in spots that they shouldn't be, and then turning on or turning off messages in the body. And that is the sort of root of how these endocrine disrupting chemicals work. I think it's worth noting that endocrine disrupting chemicals often have other effects too. They don't just have hormone disrupting effects. They can be neurotoxic. They can be carcinogens. They can be classified as reproductive toxins, which makes sense in the context of hormones. But they can have other effects as well. And so, and sometimes the reason for that other effect is because it is hormonal. So for example, breast cancer, if breast cancer is an estrogen driven condition, same thing with things like endometriosis, uterine fibroids, PCOS. And so excess of estrogen in there can cause problems, especially if that estrogen is synthetic, or I should say in addition to if that is synthetic coming in from the outside, like BPA and parabens and phthalates and many other chemicals. But they can also increase cancer risk because of that. So for example, with breast cancer, a woman's risk of breast cancer goes up the longer time she's exposed to estrogen. So if you have an endocrine disrupting chemical that maybe you're exposed to in utero, right? Your mom is doing perfume and the laundry and all this stuff, right? And she has a higher exposure to these chemicals, that can lead to early onset puberty.
Wow.
In daughters, and early onset puberty, because you now have an extra year, let's say, even an extra 6 months or an extra year because they started their period earlier. Now they have longer exposure to estrogen over their lifetime because they started earlier, but they're going to finish at the same time. And so that in and of itself can lead to increased risk of breast cancer. So there's it's not just hormone disruption. It is. And then some, and then there's more.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So let's talk about plastic a little bit more.
Yeah.
I know we talked about plastic, phthalates and plastic and products, but talk to me about our kitchen and the plastic containers that we use and the plastics in there. How are those, kind of doing the same thing, I would imagine?
Yeah. I mean, yes. And so I think one of the things that happens is we think, okay, BPA is in plastic, we assume BPA is in all plastic. It's not in all types of plastics. It's really only in polycarbonate plastic. And then there's like a couple other places that it shows up. But like a Ziploc bag, for example, that's plastic. It doesn't have BPA. It's never had BPA. It never will have BPA. Does it have other chemicals that might be endocrine disrupting? Probably. So right. This is where I don't actually care which chemical is leaching. The research has shown that basically all types of plastics, including some of these bioplastics, these corn-based plastics that people are, they're better for the environment because they're compostable, whatever. That's true, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're always safer than conventional plastics. So there is research that suggests that like pretty much all types of plastics that we use for food have the ability under certain circumstances to leach some of these chemicals, many of which are endocrine disrupting. And so I kind of don't care which, like, is it BPA? Is it phthalates? Is it something else? Doesn't matter. The goal is not to look at it through that lens. The goal is to look at it through the lens of, is there plastic in direct contact with my food? If the answer is yes, I'm going to look to swap that out. So that means our plastic Tupperware, our plastic cups and plates that our kids drink off of because we don't want them to chatter and drop them, and the plastic pasta strainers and mixing bowls and the plastic spatulas, all of these food items or food contact items. I think it's important to start to systematically minimize those. So use stainless steel, use glass food storage containers. They often have plastic lids. We have to do our best. If they have a plastic lid, fine, then just don't fill it up all the way. That's it. The food doesn't touch the plastic. It's a concession we have to make because that's what the marketplace has. I know Pyrex does sell glass containers with glass lids, which is great, but it's not a widely distributed line. So, but purists can have them. But you can also use things like mason jars, which is typically what I use for a lot of my food storage because they're inexpensive. They double as a glass, and they double as like a to-go because I can, like when I go, for example, to one of our local restaurants here, and there's this place I go that makes this amazing broth, and I bring my own jars because otherwise it's in a plastic container. Right. It's like, you just made this amazing broth. Please don't put it in that plastic. Please just put it in my glass jar, and they're fine. So the idea is that we just systematically swap those things out. And where I usually encourage people to start is just go in your kitchen and just open the cabinets and open the drawers. You don't have to do anything. Just look. Just look, just take stock of like, oh, wow, really, there's a lot of plastic in here. There's the cups, there's the, yogurt tubs that I'm reusing. Don't do that. That's a no. And this is an interesting, and this is a topic for a whole nother conversation is, there's a lot of people that are, very conscious of environmental waste and recycling and zero waste and that whole movement to minimize our sort of ecological impact. And they come from this place of like, but I do want to reuse my plastics because it's keeping it out of the landfill. And I'm like, yes. And you are potentially like, that's just don't buy foods that come packaged that way, which is tricky because I say just do that, but it's really hard. Yogurt, most of it comes packaged in plastic. Am I going to tell people to not eat yogurt? No, I am going to tell people to just not reuse those containers because that's not what they're intended for. So we just want to systematically phase out that plastic. The illustrative example that I often give is like the Tupperware container, plastic container that's stained orange because it had your top tomato sauce or pasta sauce or whatever, tomato soup in there. And like, no matter how many times you run it through the dishwasher, also something you don't want to do, it stays orange forever. And the reason for that is because the oil in your sauce as well as the acidity of the tomatoes. Like there's five things really that speed up the rate at which chemicals migrate out of plastics: heat, oil, acidity, and abrasion. And then the last one is time. So the longer something sits, the more it's a problem. But if you're putting in your leftover tomato soup or pasta sauce that's hot, that's got oil in it, and that's made with tomatoes and it's acidic, it's sort of this 1, 2, 3 punch, right? And so what happens is the sort of boundary of where the plastic stops and the sauce begins gets blurry. It starts the oil and the acidity, and it starts to break down the plastic a little bit. And so the reason why your container is stained orange and you can't get it clean is because you've now physically embedded these oil molecules that are stained with lycopene, tomato pigments, and they're physically embedded into the matrix of the plastic. So it's not on the plastic, it's in the plastic. And the inverse of that is that you're actually getting plastic in your sauce. So that's the sort of visual lesson there for people if they go into their pantry and they're like, oh my God, I have like dozens of these containers that have no lids because the lids always get lost and they're all stained orange. I don't necessarily want to say, go throw them out, go repurpose them, put them in the garage, go use them to sort screws or bolts or whatever, put crayons in them. Like it's okay to use, like the goal is not to be plastic phobic. We just want to minimize food contact with plastic as much as possible. That is the goal. So just get them out of the kitchen and repurpose them somewhere else where you're not going to be putting food in them. So that's sort of the big area with plastics in the kitchen.
Yes, I love that. And I actually heard you talk about this on another show, and I told my husband this. And so now every time we do anything with tomato, anything, he's like, we cannot put that in plastic. Not that we have a ton of plastic in our kitchen, but he's a man. So it took a little bit more to get him off of that. But yeah, that's such a wonderful, wonderful visual.
Yeah.
Cool. So tell us where we can find you, where we can learn more about you. And on the other side of that, I know you work a lot with educators. So real quickly, kind of tell us how your work, falls into that lane.
Yeah. So I'll do it in reverse order. So okay. I teach health professionals really across all modalities, everybody from, a health coach, a nutritionist, a midwife, and a doula, up to, physicians assistants, MDs, NDs, DOs, to really understand the links between these everyday environmental exposures and the chronic health issues that they're seeing in their clients or patients, so they can bring this topic and integrate it into the work that they're already doing in a way that is empowering, that's informative, and not super overwhelming. So that's the work that I do. People can go to my website, which is just Lara Adler, LARAADLER.com. You can check out all my courses there. If people aren't a health professional and they're just like, I want to keep learning about this, they can follow me over on Instagram. I'm over there at Environmental Toxins Nerd. I've got hundreds of posts. I post very regularly, and I'm constantly sharing educational information and tips and ways that you can start reducing that exposure in as many places as possible. So that would be the best way for people to come and find me. But yeah, for the clinicians or practitioners that are out there, this is a major gap in the education. And unless you're a naturopathic physician whose curriculum includes environmental medicine, most people don't have actually very much, if any, training in this space. And I think that is really going to have to shift in a big way because more and more clinicians and scientists are realizing that, environmental toxins are a significant, if not primary, driver of disease. And until we address that, we're going to constantly be kind of mopping up the floor. And as I like to say, we want to turn off the tap, right? We want to turn it off so that we can mop more efficiently instead of just sloshing water around, which is oftentimes what it feels like we're doing. So yeah, for clinicians or health educators or anybody out there who wants to learn more about this, I just invite them to come check out my courses.
I love that. And I'll have to say, I love your Instagram page too. I learned so much over there. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Yes. Well, cool. Well, before we wrap up, any final thoughts you want to leave us with?
I think just that, it's like I said in the beginning, it's what we do every day that matters. It's not what we do every once in a while. And I just posted this recently on my Instagram, which is this statement that has been my sort of anchor and motto since day one, which is, let's change the things that we can control so we worry less about the ones that we can't. So there's a lot of things in our control. We just focus on those things. And we take it one step at a time.
I love that. Oh, I 100% agree. So thank you for that. And thank you so much for being here. I've really enjoyed talking to you. I could talk to you all day, like I told you on our break.
Yeah.
So
it's a big topic. It's a big topic. This is really just skimming the surface.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much. And thank you guys for listening. Until next time on the Hormone Puzzle Podcast. Bye for now. Hey, hang on just 1 second before you go. I want to make sure that you are aware of all of the amazing free resources that I have for you on my website at CoachKayla.com. From a fertility meal plan, a cycle syncing quick start guide, a holistic healing cookbook, as well as master classes, blog posts by me and some amazing experts in the fields of fertility, hormones, and nutrition. So many wonderful resources that will help you on your journey. And I wish there had been something like this when I was going through my 2 years of infertility, but there just wasn't. And so that's why I decided to create all of this for you. So make sure that you go and check it out and you take advantage of this plethora of support that I have provided for you. And spoiler alert, these were some of the same tricks and the same foods that I used to get myself pregnant, not once, but twice, even after my doctors said that I couldn't. So I know that these things work. Make sure you take advantage of that. And I cannot wait for you to be my next success story. So thanks, love. See you soon. Thanks for tuning in today to the Hormone Puzzle Podcast. Check out the show notes for today's episode at CoachKayla.com. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and leave a review. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you next week.